Hi everyone. We'll be waiting 2 to 3 minutes before starting the webinar, just simply to accommodate for the rest of the attendees to join who are in the middle of connecting. Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us. Thanks for being part of our community. My name is Valon Kalika, and I will be your host for today. A few reminders before we start. If you have issues viewing the stream at any time during this presentation and you're using the web browser version of Teams, please refresh your browser. That seems to help a lot. Also, if you're using the desktop app of Teams, please exit and rejoin. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be shared publicly. We will post the recordings on our community at aka.ms/security-webinars. Closed captions in several languages are available during this live broadcast, and you can enable them by clicking on the CC button. Feel free to ask questions at any time by typing them in the live event Q&A window, simply by clicking on the Ask Question button. Please be aware that any questions you post will be publicly visible. However, if you prefer, you can post your question anonymously. You can do so by checking the box right below where you enter it. We often get many questions on these webinars, and we'll do our best to respond to all of them in real time. In the event, if the answer was not provided, or if you may have additional questions post the event, please don't hesitate to raise them on our Azure Security Center forum at aka.ms ASC community. If you're listening to this after fact, that's also a great place to ask a question. Now, we'd love to hear your feedback on how we can improve these webinars, which you can do so at aka.ms/security webinar feedback. I would also like to invite you to join our community by visiting us at aka.ms/security community. This is simply the best way to ensure you don't miss any future webinars or major announcements. On our community, you can speak directly to our engineering teams that create our security products. You'll also be able to influence our product designs and get early access to changes by doing things like participating in private previews, which you can sign up at aka.ms/security PRP. You can request features, give feedback, review our product roadmaps, register for events, or join webinars like this. We believe that the best way to improve our products is by removing any barriers between you and the people that create them. So we hope you'll join us. In today's session, Yuri Diogenes and Safina Lepakshi will go over the key points of why security hygiene should be your #1 priority. Obviously, using Azure Security Center Secure Score. Yuri is a principal program manager, and Safina is senior program manager. Both of them with our Azure Security Center team. And without further ado, I will turn it over to them. Safina, Yuri, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Fallon. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So excited to be here. My name is Safina. I am the Senior Program Manager from the Customer Experience team, and we will be speaking about the best practices to improve your secure score. I want to pass it over to my friend Yuri to kickstart the session.
Thanks, Safina. Thanks, Valen, for the intro. Thanks, everyone, for joining. As Safina mentioned, today's session is about best practice to improve your secure score. I work with Safina on the CXE Azure Security Center team as a principal program manager, and part of our role is to help our customer improve their secure posture by driving the enhancement of their secure score. So let's move on and let's get started here with the first poll that I want you to access this poll on this link that we're going to share on the screen right now on the Teams. I want you to make sure that you share with us what is your biggest challenge when it comes to cloud security posture management. You can respond that to this link on the top, pollenv.com/ASC secure score. Please take a minute to read the options and to highlight which one is the most challenging for you. That's very important to us. That helps us to prioritize how we make product improvements, how we also improve the overall experience. Okay, so let's give a little bit more time here. Let's see. Things are moving in the direction that I was expecting. Let's see what else we have. That looks like things are changing differently now. Okay, very interesting. All right, thanks for taking the time. Okay, so these are very interesting results. It looks like lack of knowledge in Azure Security Center is staying stable as #1 reason for your biggest challenge. So that also help us to identify areas that we can improve in from the readiness perspective. I see that the second one is the remediate security recommendations, which is something that I heard in the past. So basically validate some of the hypotheses. So that's good data. That's good data. Thank you very much for taking the time to share this with us. I think we have enough votes here. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. Safina, please. All right. So why security hygiene should be your #1 priority? There are many articles, studies out there showing that poor security hygiene basically helps threat actors to take advantage of your environment by easily taking control of some of your resources. So there is a lot of effort to create new threat detections. It is a lot of effort to identify threat actors that are trying to get into the environment, but there is a poor address of the security hygiene. In other words, the preventative work that should be done to avoid the threat actors to be able to exploit something in the first place is not done correctly, right? A lot of customers, they invest a lot on threat detection, but they do not do the homework, which what I call the homework is ensuring that servers are hardening, ensure that all the vulnerabilities are patched, ensuring that the security recommendations are remediated. All those things together strengthen your secure posture, and you are basically creating guardrails to avoid threat actors to exploit those vulnerabilities. In our Microsoft Digital Defense report that we released last year, we saw a huge trend in COVID, for example. So during the peak of COVID in March last year, we saw that threat actors were using COVID as a theme to perform malicious actions against customers via phishing, email, and different types of campaigns that were leveraging the COVID as a theme, right? To entice users to click on something, entice users to open an email. And this, again, is all about secure hygiene, because if you have all the vulnerabilities patch, if you have your employees educated from this cybersecurity perspective, if you have a good security awareness program, you are reducing the likelihood that a threat actor will exploit a known vulnerability, right? So that's very important. And recently, if we move on to the next slide, recently we saw the same trend in the SolarGate. As a matter of fact, we released an article last month, January 14, emphasizing the actions that you should take, additional actions that you should take in order to enhance your security posture. So we call out again that even for the most advanced type of attacks, a strong secure posture can reduce the likelihood that threat actors will take advantage of known vulnerabilities on your environment. So make sure to visit this article on our Microsoft Secure blog and go through the series of SolarGate articles that explains more about the detail. I just want to call out that secure posture management is #1 priority, and you should really invest time to do that. And that's why we have Security Center today to talk about how you can leverage Security Center and Security Score to address this problem. Next. The way that we look at security posture is based on 3 major pillars. We have the protection, detection, and the response. When it comes to Security Center, Cloud Security Posture Management platform, the work is done to create and enhance the protection, right? So we are looking to this first pillar on the left, protection. This is where you're gonna review your recommendations. This is where you are going to remediate your recommendations. You're gonna ensure that you are driving the security score up, which means you are reducing the amount of vulnerabilities that you have on your environment. And vulnerabilities could mean a configuration that is not secure enough. It means a setting that should be changed in order to hardening more a service. So it means a lot of things. It's not only patch. Patch is part of the problem as well, but it's not only that. For example, when you're talking about SQL vulnerability assessment, we are talking about a series of security checks that are done on the database to ensure that that database is secure. This is also part of protection. So when you do that, you increase your security score. And then after that, you have the detection. And the detection is where Azure Defender works primarily, which is our cloud workload protection platform. So the detection are analytics that were created specifically for different types of workloads. For example, you have Azure Defender for SQL, Azure Defender for storage. The difference is basically the analytics or each one of the workloads were created specifically for that scenario. So it's very important to have specific analytics to monitor different workloads. And then the last but not least, response. So you want to ensure that you are not only detecting something quickly, but you are responding to something. So we have mechanisms in Security Center that are available for that, such as workflow automation that allows you to take an action if an alert is triggered, or take an action if a recommendation is triggered. So all those pillars, we do have capabilities built in, but the goal of today's presentation is protection, okay? Next. So think about cloud security posture management as a defense in depth approach. So the defense in depth approach is an old school type of approach, but in a cloud computing environment is still very present. The only difference is that you have multi-layers of protection within the cloud. So Security Center, for example, when it gives a recommendation for you to enable data encryption at rest, you are adding one layer of defense on that disk. But then you also have another recommendation that asks you to enable NSG. This is another layer of protection. This is a layer of protection on the networking level. So you have compute, you have network, and you have data at rest, data in transit. That's why we ask you to enable TLS. So there are multiple layers of protection to really protect your resources. So I always think that when you are remediating recommendations to Security Center, you are adding multiple layers of protection, right? That's why it's so important for you to reveal the security controls and start addressing each one of those recommendations. And I'm going to pass on to Safina to give an overview of the security score.
Thanks for the great walkthrough, Yuri. So before we step into discussing the best practices, I want to give you an overview and rewind the value proposition of Azure Security Center and Azure Security Center Secure Score. So in today's world, cloud gives us great flexibility so that you can spin up resources in fraction of seconds to minutes. But along with that, if you think of it, it gives us challenge as well. We often hear from customers they struggle to gain visibility of their environment and their environment security posture. So that's exactly where Azure Security Center helps you with. Security Center is a natively integrated feature of Azure. It'll help you understand your enterprise security posture, be your services are located in on-prem or on cloud, or even in the other across clouds like GCP or AWS workloads. So it gives you the complete visibility and control of your environment. Now, like you notice here in the screen, we have two modes that Azure Security Center comes with, free tier and the standard tier, which we now call it as Azure Defender. So when you onboard your subscriptions to Azure Security Center in the free tier, it's able to assess your resources and provides you security recommendations for services like compute, network, storage, Key Vault, SQL, and more resources. And of course, since it's free tier, so it offers limited capabilities that too for your Azure resources only. But even though it's free tier, you are able to see the secure score. Every recommendation will have a score and which will be measured with the KPI called secure score. You should be able to evaluate how your environment is doing. And with the help of secure score, you can track the recommendations and you can set goals, right? Now, the interesting part comes, which is your Azure Defender, which we used to call it as an Azure Security Center standard tier, which has been renamed to Azure Defender. Now, Azure Defender offers you the cloud workload platform protection, which is mapped towards your detection and response, which is super important if you think about it, because it's important to understand if your environment is under attack. And if it is under attack, you need to rapidly respond to that attack, right? Like how fast you respond to that attack is very important. So having a good detection of your cloud workloads is definitely imperative, and that's exactly what the cloud workload platform protection helps you with. And in our Azure documentation, we have documented list of services and their availability per tier. So please make sure to check that out. Now, moving on to the next slide. I want to speak a bit about CSPM capability, like we discussed in the last slide, which is your cloud security posture management. This kind of helps you prevent if there are any misconfigurations that you have in your environment. It helps you identify that, and it helps you eventually strengthen your security posture. So, like I mentioned earlier, when working in a cloud environment, monitoring security state of multiple workloads can be challenging, especially when you have resources located everywhere, right? Like if you have resources in multiple cloud providers and so on. So, how do you know if your security posture across all the workloads is at the highest possible level? That's with the help of the secure score. Secure score is a measurement of your organization security posture. So when Security Center assesses your resources, right, it aggregates all of these findings into a single score, and so that at a glance you can tell about the current security situation. So the higher the percentage means that your environment is at the lower risk. And each recommendation that Security Center offers you or assesses and provides you has its secure score impact. And this number will kind of allow you to see how your score will be impacted once you address this recommendation. And remember, the more recommendations you resolve, the more points you get. Now, the total number of points actually depends on the number of resources that you have in your environment. So you might resolve recommendations. Let's say, imagine your secure score now is at 80%, and someone spins up more resources in your subscriptions unsecurely, for example, and your secure score will decrease again. So as and when you spin up resources, and if Security Center finds the resources are not following security best practices, your secure score will go down. So it's really important that you maintain the score by making sure your organization is following the proper governance. Because after all, you have invested time and effort in increasing your secure score, and you want to make sure that it will not decrease by a serious percentage again, right? So that's exactly what we want to highlight in today's session, best practices. So as we work with customers day in and day out, we understand there are many strategies to continue driving the secure score up. And some of the most important and basic ones are the ones that we are going to cover today. And over to Yuri, who will give us overview of our discussion points today.
Yeah, so let's go to the next one, Safina, real quick. The way that throughout more than a year, we've been working with customers very closely, some very specific customers that are driving their secure score up. So we have a lot of lessons learned. Everything that we are presenting today are based on those lessons learned. So we establish a secure score best practice lifecycle, and there are some core principles within this life cycle that we observe. So we observed that the customers that were more successfully in increasing their secure score, they had sponsorship and delegation, they have good governance, they have a readiness and secure awareness program, they have policy enforcement and continuous monitoring. Now, policy enforcement sometimes merges into governance, and we're going to touch on that. And then we have continuous monitoring. So it can be 5 or it can be 4. It depends on how you implement. But let's go through each one of those. Safina is going to cover the first one, which is sponsorship and delegation.
Thank you, Yuri. So secure score best practice number 1, sponsorship and delegation, which is the first step to the success. So it's in our experience as we work with customers, we observe the companies who have support from the upper management to track the secure score progress over time and remediate recommendations in time are the ones who help spread best practice guidelines in spinning up resources, and they actually see a lot of success in making sure they are, first of all, not just remediating the recommendations recommendations, but also taking care of the governance. Now, talking about the remediation, right? So when it comes to the remediating security recommendations, it can be overwhelming in some situations if you think about it, especially when the team that manages Azure Security Center does not have privileges to remediate the workloads, right? So in this case, they will need to interact with the workload owner either through the change request process or whether process the organization, whatever process the organization has, in order to ask them to remediate the security recommendations in their workload. So two important things here, making sure that you have privileges to remediate, or you need to make sure that you have good process in place where you can take help of the service tickets and have the recommendations remediated with the help of the workload owner. And remember, this is just the initial phase. Here you're evaluating the recommendations, you're taking help of the workload owners and remediating it. And once you remediate it, you really need to make sure that you have proper and good governance to lower the amount of security recommendations in the future. That's where my next point comes. You need to make sure that you make use of automations wherever necessary in order to notify about new recommendations to the workload owners and keep them accountable. So once you do that, you are golden. You have sponsorship to start with, you have identified and sorted out the privileges, and you have the workflow in place, right? So this process will make your workload owners look not just into the recommendations in the timely manner, but eventually making it successful as well. So, this is super important. You don't have to reinvent the wheel and invest the time in writing the automations for the points that we discussed in the last slide. And one of the critical things, we have our Azure Security Center GitHub repository where we have a number of automations that me and my team has written, and which you can make use of it. And these are the automations that I have highlighted in the slide related to the secure score. We have a beautiful Power BI report to track the secure score over time report. We have number of other automations like sending you notifications to the workload owners, and most importantly, you don't want to be notified when your secure score decreases, say by X%? I'm sure you want to stay on top of it, right? So the last automation helps you on that section. Make sure you visit our GitHub repository to view these automations and many more of these sort. Now, some of the questions that you might be thinking in your mind, if you have not already, then these are the questions that you might have to think about it. So do you have upper management approval or not? And what are the teams that's involved? And how are you measuring the success of your remediation of the scores? And then do you have administrative privileges at the tenant level, or do you have access to the teams who have privileges, right? So these are the number of questions that you have to think about if you have not already for the success from the first step. Now, I have a quick poll. I want to understand how you're doing today in your organization. So if you can let me know, do you have upper management sponsorship to improve your cloud security posture? Yes, no, or you're working on it? Okay, that's a positive thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for the participation. That's cool. Okay, now I'm gonna give it to Yuri to speak about the governance.
Yeah, so Safina covered the first part, which is very important. We observe extremely successful in cases where we have upper management sponsorship of the project. Now, the second best practice in the sector success factor is governance. If you think about many organizations, they have two different teams. A team that is responsible for the Azure governance all up from the cloud computing perspective. They are the ones that are going to create guardrails. They are the ones that are going to implement things to be enforced in the beginning of the pipeline, deny resources that should not be deployed, things like that. Now, this team needs to have a communication with the CSPM team, the Cloud Security Posture Management team, the team that manage the security posture of the cloud, which will be utilizing Azure Security Center. So there are a lot of policies that are part of the Azure Security Center default security policy that can be used for the governance team to implement guardrails in the beginning of the pipeline to avoid that oscillation in the secure score. For example, you suddenly reach 85% on your secure score. You are all happy that you are only 15 percent points away from reaching 100%. Then there is a new workload owner that deploys a lot of new workloads, and now your secure score is 50%. Why that happens, right? So when you go to dig into the root cause of the problem, you identify that that drop, it happened because those resources were deployed without using secure best practices in the first place. So now Secure Center has to scan those resources, identify that they are missing those secure best practices, and now the secure score is dropping again. So you should use Secure Center as a learning mechanism as well to incorporate the lessons learned into your governance and then create guardrails in the beginning of the pipeline to avoid workload owners to provision resources that are not secure. Now, there are some customers that are not in that level of maturity yet. And that's very important, and we acknowledge this, right? There are many customers that are still on this journey to the cloud, and they don't have governance maturity level advanced, so they don't really enforce things in the beginning of the pipeline because they are afraid of breaking things, or they are afraid of not allowing workload owners to provision resources, right? But it is a learning mechanism, right? You can still flag things that needs to be incorporated into the governance itself. And if we move to the next slide, we also have artifacts that we make it available for you to leverage. Some of these artifacts are not only artifacts in our GitHub repository, but also articles in our tech community, documentation. So we investing a lot on readiness perspective as well, because sometimes the feature is there, but you don't know how to use it. So these articles are some of the articles that can help you with that. And we're going to make this deck available, so you're going to be able to click on all those hyperlinks, okay? And mainly go through the job aid questions, which is the next slide as well, because as you navigate through this process, you got to ask to the team, which team manage the overall cloud governance? You don't know, so you have to answer those questions before you make any type of implementation. So those job aid questions are here to help you identify some key areas that you need to invest time to find out the ownership, and also to understand how the company works, because maybe you are new to this job, maybe you are new to implementing Secure Center. You need to understand how can you partner with other teams to improve the secure posture overall. Back to you, Sophia. Not back to you. Actually, we have another poll real quick here. From the options below, which one better describe your current Azure governance integration with Secure Center? That's a very, very important question. And there's a lot of answers, and I would like you to be very sincere on your answer, because this basically gauge your level of maturity on your cloud governance as well. Good. We have someone that is still not there on the maturity level yet. We might have more people voting right now. Let's see. Give one more minute to folks to read the options that are available. I'm pretty sure there are more other options. There you go. That's good. All right, interesting. This is super important because all this helps also us to understand what needs to be improved from the product perspective for customers, for example, that do not have the level of maturity yet. So how can we facilitate things, right? And for the ones that are already mature, how can we help them to speed up the adoption process? So thank you very much for taking the time to click on the option that better reflects your current scenario.
Absolutely.
All right, Yusufina.
Okay. Sorry about this. So moving on, all of these strategies we spoke so far can only make sense if you and your team has a good readiness and security awareness. So from our experience, we've observed a huge increase in any organization secure score was mainly because of their strategy, in order to train their workload owners about security center, as well as how to use it and much more, like if there is a recommendation, why the recommendation is there, and so on and so forth. And we have also observed that organizations have been creating training campaigns, which we wanted to share in this session. Like, for example, making sure that the stakeholders, IT team, readiness teams getting together, creating trainings, awareness campaigns, or gamification programs in order to help the workload owners and the team to understand the value proposition of Security Center and even how to use them to best of their abilities. And we've also observed in instances where CSPM team, the Cloud Security Posture Management team, provides support for all the teams by delivering the trainings and helping the teams understand the artifacts, the automations that we have and that you can make and how you can contribute, and this will eventually help you as a team, as well as in order to get secure better, as well as you maintaining a proper governance in future. Again, you don't have if you don't have such procedure already in your organization, nothing to worry about. We are here to help you with the resources you need, and these are some of the trainings that we have already available. And the training roadmap is a beautiful training that is being put together by Yuri for all the levels. This is our ASC Ninja training that is organized in a format that will help you go from absolutely no knowledge in Azure Security Center to the ability to design and even implement different scenarios. And the training modules, the training is divided into modules so that it starts from the introduction to getting into bit deeper, as you move from module to module. Make sure you check it out. And we have a gamification as well. It's a workbook that displays the secure score and even from your Azure Defender across all the subscriptions, as well as the security posture by a team or by department. Workbooks, you can play with workbooks with the help of tags that we have available, and you can organize your workbook the way you want to make sure that the information that you need, you're able to see it in order to monitor the secure hygiene. And the last one that I want to highlight is the geolocation secure score visualization. We have this is another workbook that was created by one of my another amazing teammate. That's helpful for scenarios like if you want to have visibility of secure score for different subscriptions that are in different regions in a single dashboard. You can leverage this. Make sure you check it out, and don't forget to let us know your feedback. And these are some of the questions that you would want to think about. What is the current knowledge of your security center? Does your company have security awareness training? And how effectively can you utilize the trainings that we have already available in our GitHub repository and in our tech community article? Though we have a number of resources already available, but we want to understand from you what more we can do to help better ramp up in Security Center. Okay, all of the above, just how we expected. Keep them coming.
Yeah, I think it'll be that. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, videos, awesome. That's a great feedback. Thank you. Due to the time limitation, I'm gonna move to the next slide. Thanks so much for your participation. Over to you, Ray.
All right, all right. So, if you remember the issue slide, we have 5 major practices, but we consolidate governance and policy enforcement in a single one for the purpose of this presentation. As I said, depends on the maturity level. You might have 2 different areas. Governance and policy enforcement might be separate. For continuous monitoring, right? So now that you have the sponsorship, you have governance, you have readiness. Is it over? It's never over, right? It's a continuous improvement process. You are always looking to how fine-tuning things, how to leverage the lessons learned from Security Center to feedback the governance. And keep in mind that we are always adding new recommendations in Security Center. And one of the things that we've done recently is that new recommendations in Security Center will not affect your security score negatively, right? Because now everything that is new as far as recommendation, we put a tag called preview. So all preview recommendations will have no negative effect on your security score, which means that you have time to know more about that recommendation, understand which resources are going to be affected by that recommendation, and then work on a plan to remediate and not be so concerned about having to remediate right away, otherwise your security score is going to drop. So that's a transition phase that we put to help you, give you time to prepare to remediate that recommendation, okay? So the continuous monitor perspective, what we have is a series of artifacts as well on our GitHub for automation remediations. We have a series of remediations that are available, not to count that many recommendations already have the quick fix, which allows you not only to remediate in a single click, but you can also have the ARM code for that quick fix and deploy out of band, right? So for example, you say, I don't want to use quick fix because I'm afraid of breaking something. So you can look at the code behind the quick fix and deploy on your own if you want to, okay? We have the inventory capability to allow you to query different recommendations. The inventory is one single place that you can go and look for recommendations across all the different workloads. So make sure to leverage that dashboard as well. We are constantly adding more stuff in there, new queries. You can also pivot from that dashboard to Azure Resource Graph to go to a deeper query. And we have the exemption capability, which is very important for continuous monitoring, because as you are monitoring the resources, you might find out that there are a couple of resources that you will not be able to remediate right away, right? Let's say that you have a legacy application running on a VM, and you know for a fact that if you enable disk encryption on that VM, that legacy application is going to stop working. So you don't want to do that. So what do you do if you are receiving the disk encryption recommendation for that VM? Well, you can create an exemption. for that VM, right? You create an exemption for that recommendation, and you can say, I'm going to revisit this recommendation 6 months from now, because in between now and in the next 6 months, I'm going to work with the vendors to see how we resolve this problem, right? So all the exemptions, they should have also an expiration date. You don't want to be blind forever about things that you never remediated, right? So when creating exemption, make sure to do that as well. Create automations to keep track of the resource exemption. Ton from our team, he create a good automation that is available on our GitHub, and also has a whole blog post explaining how to implement this. This is a very cool capability that he put together to allow you to have visibility of the resources that were exempted. Moving on. And the job 8 questions, right? So now that you got to this point, the questions are, how are you triaging recommendations to decide which ones are going to be included in the beginning of the pipeline for policy enforcement, right? What are the processes to feed the governance team? There are many things that you will find out as you move along. It's a new process, is a journey. So you are learning as you go. It's important that you have the right questions to ask to the stakeholders to ensure that by asking the right question, you get the answer that you need in order to move on. How are you controlling those exemptions, right? So all those things you need to ask and document and plan for the next phase. And now Safina is going to give a demo about a Secure Score progress report automation that she put together. And the article for this automation is already available as of today in our tech community page. Go ahead, Safina.
Thank you, Yuri. I'm super excited to show you an automation that I released today. This will give you the Secure Score progress report. So going to the Logic app, let me quickly show you how the Logic app works. So this is my Logic app working together. So this is an automation playbook which is using the Logic app that runs, that is scheduled to run weekly. Obviously, you have the ability to change it to depending on what you're looking for. So the idea of this automation is we want to give you the ability or a weekly notification and update you the details like what is your current secure score and what your secure score overtime progress report is. And in case if you notice a spectacular change in the graph, you can review the security controls. So here is the automation in our GitHub repository, the secure score overtime report, and this is working together and making sure that you stay on top of the recommendations that's displayed on the security center. And let me quickly show you or run this automation trigger and wait for it to send me an email and show you how the email would look like. Okay, so I have my email here. Which I'm bringing up here on the screen. This automation will give you what is your current secure score and how you are trending since the last report, and also gives you more information. Like, for example, in my case, I have decreased a bit here, and the secure score is consistent since then. And it also gives you security controls that are active and that needs to be displayed along with the subscription ID and unhealthy resources, as well as the top 5 recommendations that are currently open. So the idea behind this is if you notice a spectacular change in this graph, you can review the security controls that are open and make sure that you prioritize it and then take care of it. And having this kind of detailed visibility is super important so that you can keep track of the secure hygiene. And this automation here is actually querying your log analytics workspace, right? And it's using 2 API connections, Azure Monitor Logs that is used to connect to your log analytics workspace, and of course, Office 365 API connection that is used to send you weekly secure score progress report email. We've already published the automation in the GitHub repository, and I've just released the blog this morning. Make sure you read it and then try it out. And as usual, let us know your feedback, how you like it, and if you are interested in making more, changes in this automation, I would be happy to hear the feedback. So that's all from me. Over to Yuri to close out. Thank you.
All right, let's go back to the PowerPoint. All right, so now that we went through this, let's establish some homework, because I really love homework, right? So first thing, review Azure Security Center recommendations. This is part of the free tier, so there is absolutely no reason for not using Azure Security Center recommendations and address those recommendations. Think about a alarm system that you have for free in your house and is triggering 3 red lights saying that there are 3 doors open. Why not go and close those doors because you have an alarm saying those doors are open? And everyone asks me, what is the ideal security score? And I always say the ideal security score is 100%. There is no reason to be 80, right? Why are you going to close 2 doors and leave another one open? There is always the likelihood that someone is going to exploit that door. When you are 100%, it doesn't mean that you are 100% secure. It means that you are reduced the likelihood as much as you could that someone is going to exploit a known vulnerability, right? So you are doing your homework, you're being diligent to do that. Prioritize the security controls that have highest security score impact. That's another question that comes a lot. Which one should I prioritize? Which recommendation? Well, first of all, you need to pick a security control, because for you to earn points on the security score, you need to address all recommendations that are part of a security control that give you points. And on the dashboard, we already organized top down in the order of priority, which security control give you more points. So go for that security control and address the recommendations that are there on the top down approach. Remediate the recommendations that belong to the security control. As I said, create exemptions when necessary and document the why those exemptions were created. Very important to document. And on the UI, we give you a little field that you can write it down, the rationale behind creating that exemption, right? So you need to document that as well and establish an expiration date. Configure the security score Power BI dashboard. The Power BI dashboard that our data scientist team in Israel put together is fantastic. You should go to our GitHub and follow the instructions to configure this Power BI, and then you can have deep insights on your own security score. So make sure to use that as well. Automate the process to notify workload owners that new recommendations were created for the workloads. So if you think about, if you want to create some dynamic and not be so dependent on the CSPM team, and many times the CSPM team does not have privilege on the workload itself, you want to notify the workload owner that there are new recommendations for their workloads and they should take an action. We have blog posts and automations available that allows you to do that step by step on how to do it. Automate the security score progress report via email, the one that Safina just showed. This is a good weekly meeting, right? Let's say that you establish a cadence that every Friday you're going to review the security score and see how things are progressing. So on Thursday afternoon, everyone receives this email on the team, review the email, go to the meeting on Friday, go through what is working, what is not working, what needs to be done, how to unblock scenarios and move forward, right? So there is a lot of non-technical things that needs to be done. That's why we, when create this presentation, we were looking to a broader approach from the design considerations perspective. Next slide. And here is more a compilation of some links that you can utilize to obtain more information, right? So we have here the links for the documentation itself at docs. We have links for the Azure Security Center in the Field, which is a bi-weekly show that I present where I interview engineers, developers on Azure Security Center and Azure Defender. There is an episode for each capability in Security Center. I highly recommend you to visit and subscribe to the Microsoft Security channel. There is the training roadmap, which is the Azure Security Center Ninja training. The Azure Security Center labs in our repository, GitHub repository. And if you are just looking for marketing related information about Defender and Security Center, these are the short links. And with that, we have precisely 6 minutes for Q&A.
Well, great. Although lots of questions were coming in and the team were answering, let's see if there's anything outstanding and unanswered out there. I'm just giving it a quick look here.
So there is someone pasted a link there. securescore.microsoft.com. That's really not. There are two secure score, and sorry, this is confusing, right? Because there is the Office 365 secure score and the Azure secure score. The one that we cover today is the Azure Security Center secure score, not the Office 365 one. Okay. If you think about this one, is more for your PaaS resources as well as your infrastructure as a services resources and your hybrid scenario. This is the secure score for those 3 major scenarios. If you think about the Office 365 secure score, the Microsoft secure score is way more towards the SaaS application, the software as a service application side. So that's how you can kind of differentiate. One is more infrastructure, the other one is more SaaS.
Thanks, Yuri. That was thanks for providing this clarification. And in fact, that pretty much does all for the Q&A because everything is answered for the team here. But I would like to just to quickly remind the audience here, just in case we missed to answer your question, or if you have additional questions, you can visit us on Azure Security Center forum, that is in the tech community at aka.ms/ASC community. A quick reminder on the next Azure Security Center webinar, which is coming up on March 9, and we'll be covering Azure Defender for storage. And if you haven't signed up yet, please visit us at aka.ms/security webinars. I would like to close this webinar by thanking Safina and Yuri for an excellent presentation. And thank you for the rest of the team who helped answering all the questions. And most of all, I want to thank all of you for being part of our community and for joining us on these webinars. We hope to see you next time. Goodbye.